Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Star Chamber Zoom meeting for Juxtaposition. We have regular members of the Star Chamber here with Jennifer and Rose and Shirley, and we have a new person from Melbourne, Australia, Steve. Welcome, Steve. You're the newest member, and each of us is going to go in a roundtable conversation where we're going to discuss news of the day that we can verify, let's put it that way. Not news that we necessarily see on cable television, but just things we've been looking at and concerned about. So let's start off our show with Jennifer Small regarding Illinois in the bedrock of the colony known as the United States of America. Jennifer, you had a tornado attack yesterday and last night. Is that right?
That is correct. My experience comes under the topic of weather warfare. And this wasn't just a tornado. It was 12 tornadoes, at least, that hit Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin, although most of them were in Illinois. Now, I'm located 60 miles south of Chicago in a small town. This is the town where I grew up. I spent most of my adult life on the East Coast, but I always came back to visit. So I was tuned in to what was going on in the town. And I started experiencing tornado drills when I was in the 5th grade. So I've been well trained on what to do. If there's a storm coming, you go into the basement and, I'm not scared because I know what to do. But I'm telling you my experience because what's going on is unprecedented. This is crazy. This is not Mother Nature, because besides being 12 or more tornadoes, the shape of them is abnormal. Tornadoes are more typically vertical, a spiral, like a pyramid. These are mostly wedge tornadoes, which are rectangular. They're as wide as they are high, and they're like a big boulder just coming forth, like a big monster, like a cookie monster just coming to eat you up. Okay, this was crazy. Now, last night, the sirens went off in my town, and I got 2 emergency alerts on my phone with the blaring, emergency. But fortunately, my town was okay. We did not get it. 30 miles to the west, the town was hit, and 53 miles to the west, another town had total destruction. This is just crazy. Okay, this isn't normal. Now, 3 months ago, the town did experience a massive monster tornado. I was here again. I was in my basement, and that caused major damage to the town and to my
How many houses were destroyed in your town, approximately?
I don't know, honestly.
They should know by now. It's been 3 months.
Yeah, I haven't checked. But
wasn't the homes along the river mostly?
About 5 miles away, because if you're talking about destruction, for example, my roof had to be replaced because of hail damage. The hail was the size of tennis balls. And it's still, the construction man is coming tomorrow morning to look at the windows on the side because there's more work to do on the side of the house that isn't finished yet. And even now, you can hear the hammering all over the neighborhood as one new roof after another gets repaired and restored. So and there'd never been a tornado like that in my lifetime. And I talked to people. I said, have you ever seen something like this? I said, no. I mean, there have been some tornadoes, not that serious. Maybe I don't want to say, but there's always sort of the warning. It could be, but tornado. Yeah, there's a difference between a warning and a watch. A watch means the atmosphere is ripe for potential tornado. So be careful and keep your eyes open and listen to reports. A warning means a tornado has been spotted and is coming in your direction, and you may need to take shelter immediately. And if you're on the road, you pull over, you don't go under a viaduct. There's certain rules. If you don't have a basement, you go into the bathroom, etc. So last night when I was watching one of the programs on my laptop in the basement, the guy kept at that moment there were 11. It got up to 11 warnings at one time, but then today I've learned that there were more than 12 spotted. And I just heard an interview with a man who's been a professional storm chaser for 10 years, and he said he'd never seen anything like this, and he described it as an historic event. So I I don't know to make, well, something weird is going on. This is not natural. This feels very targeted. I'm wondering, like, what, why are they trying to get rid of us? Like, what are they after? They just want to destroy farms and small houses and barns, and the hits seem to be almost entirely small rural towns. Not so much. It kind of gets close to the suburbs of Chicago, but not so much. It's sort of one small town after another that seems to be getting destroyed or hit or devastated. And I don't, what do they have in mind? I mean, are they going to, they just want to herd us all into like little hamlets and get rid of the old way of living where people could live on farms with self-sufficiency and so forth? I don't know, but it's very frightening because you feel like something very strange is going on. So for me, the big red flag is that there's never been anything like this before. And you don't think it's going to happen in your neighborhood, but it does. And
it's happened twice in 3 months.
Yes.
After having not happened in 250 years or longer.
Right. And as I say, I just got a brand new roof. Now, fortunately, my insurance pays for almost all my repairs. But I kept thinking last night, they just need to do one more hailstorm, and I'll need another new roof again. And so will everybody else in town who's gotten their roof repaired and replaced. So the costs keep going up. And this is one way to drive people crazy or just drive people to go someplace else. There was one couple who had they had their house on the river. It was sort of a weekend house away from Chicago because a lot of people enjoy the fishing and the boating and just relaxing along the riverbank. And their house was destroyed. They said, we're not coming back. We're not rebuilding. They're gone. And so that's what could happen.
Wow.
Rose,
how's your weather up in Ontario?
So I am outside of Toronto, and I live part-time in a rural area, which is it's actually a Dutch community, and it's outside of Hamilton, which is a large city in Ontario. We've had an enormous amount of wind, and our planting for the vegetable garden has been delayed. We planted maybe about 3 weeks ago, and everything from the wind was dried up, and we had to start all over again. Went to the local farmer again, got some produce, and we're talking about it, of course. And this girl said, yeah, we've had the same problem. And we started talking about weather warfare. And she said, my father's been talking about, she's about my age. So her father's been talking about this for a long time. And just recently, actually, we've had hydro alerts on our the cable television saying high weather winds and, bunker down. I'm not sure what the wording was, but we're on a septic tank, and we've got generators. If the power goes out, we have to be able to access the water and so on and so forth. And this has happened at least 5 times in the last 3-4 weeks. Now, another thing, local television station, they'll ask people in the area to send in photos, nature photos. Well, somebody sent in a photo of the skies, and I've never seen a sky like that before. It had this incredible pattern, like scales and so on and so forth. Yeah. And the announcer was remarking, look at the beautiful sky here.
It's not beautiful. It's a military, it's called scalar infirmity. It's a radiation chessboard. It's a cornrows in the sky. It's not beautiful. It's ugly. It's militarized. That's like looking at a Sherman tank and asking, oh, it's the Mona Lisa. No, it's a tank that kills people, you idiot.
Yeah, I've never seen a sky like that before. So
I have. I see one pretty much 6 times a week minimum. All right. So your skies are got beautiful artistry of electromolecular engineering, and you have high winds, which is drying out your soil, and
Right.
then this prohibits gardens to grow when you
Right.
water them because they dry out right after you water them. Then they're dry. It's like the Sahara Desert trying to plant tomatoes in the Sahara sand, I guess.
Yeah.
And so none of this is normal, and your
No.
news media isn't very helpful with educating anybody about what the heck's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Shirley, how about you? I know you have some planting going on in your area where it is normally very hot.
Well, yeah, I'm in the desert, so in the south, so growing water is always a concern. So that's when we talk about anything like these data centers. Well, it's like, well, there's building a bunch of apartments too, and you kind of wonder how can we sustain that if we can't already have enough water. But so it's summertime and it's the desert, so it's very hot. So growing is typically done in the fall or winter time is the best time. But one thing I wanted to comment on is Jennifer. I used to grow up in a suburb of Chicago. So I know the whole time, I think we did have, the tornado watches, and you had a basement so you could hunker down there. But I think really we only had a tornado once when I was in high school, and they actually brought us downstairs into the inner corridor after it already passed over the high school and hit 3 houses. But I mean, that was like in 20 years. That was it. We did have these watches and warnings, and you'd sit under or in the basement. And then you just wait till the weather got better. But as far as 12 tornadoes, yeah, that's unheard of.
Midway Airport, which is not O'Hare, but it's another airport in the greater Chicago area. They shut down because of a possible tornado. They evacuated the control tower last night, and they canceled flights until it was all safe. But yeah, yeah. Do you mind telling me what suburb, or would you rather not say?
Melrose Park, Franklin Park area. It was close to O'Hare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that area, which I guess is, that was a long time ago. Haven't been back in a while, but yeah.
Well, I think whatever is going on, they seem to be targeting small rural towns right now. That's and also in Indiana too, not just not.
Well, let's go to our next topic. I think we're gonna have Steve. You're gonna talk next because we're here. We just talked on weather warfare, which is one of the military techniques to depopulate an area and migrate some people somewhere else. And you mentioned on the pre-show that in Melbourne, Australia, or the greater area where you live, that there's been an increase in violent crime. And why don't you talk about that? Because that's not weather warfare, but it is a form of social upheaval. And you could label it hooligans or terrorist or domestic terrorists. But why don't you speak on what's going on in your hamlet, so to speak?
Yeah, I guess it's a few different elements kind of combining seemingly. And one of the kind of mental exercises I've been going through of late is trying to pick it all apart and figure out what's really going on, what's driving it. So I guess the first point that I mentioned was, hollowing out of the local workforce here. A lot of kind of, migration, particularly from India, some of the visas that are quite controversial, where about half of the company that I work for now is, foreign born on visas. And in conversations I've had with them, they obviously get paid a pittance compared to us, but there's obviously some middleman in between taking his chunk of that. So that is kind of like one topic of conversation I imagine to be fairly global at the moment, just because a lot of the videos that I see online discussing that topic, I think it's a J1 visa in the US that is the comparable one to the one that we have here.
Yeah, a work-related visa. And I think there's like a set amount of months or years that it's good for, but I think you can renew it. It can be renewed. But
And then
there's other types like student visas or people coming to go get a postgraduate degree at one of the universities. That's another way that foreigners can come into the country on a student visa. Then there's the work visa. These are all exceptions to migration control. They're exceptions to bring in people. So, and there must be over a dozen immigration exceptions that allow people to move and live and get an apartment in your town.
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh, not so good. It's the joke here, I guess, is that in a couple of years, AI is going to take our jobs. We just don't know yet whether it's going to be artificial intelligence or an Indian. But it's a bit of a controversial topic at the moment. But I guess the other thing is, the increasing crime is kind of some topic of conversation here. But what I've noticed is there's kind of like an outsider party being built in a lot of the Rupert Murdoch press that we have here. Obviously, he's an Australian, and a lot of the Murdoch-owned newspapers, as they call them, seem to be pushing the outsider. But obviously, if you've been around long enough, you wonder whether the outsider is the controlled opposition who's going to be, groomed by the powers that be to then enact the very policies that they're supposedly fighting against. So we have an election coming up shortly, and that's one of the things I have some concern about, whether it's going to be a false prophet who's going to curb some of the issues that we seem to have here.
100% guarantee. You have no elections are that's a charade. There's no election. They can have a fake election. But have you met Lachlan Murdoch? He's the son of Rupert, right? Lachlan? Lachlan? Do you know where he lives in California? Do you know what his address is? You can send him a postcard if they'll deliver it. Okay. I got his address. You can send to Lachlan Murdoch. He only lives there with his wife. Ever heard of the Beverly Hillbillies television show? Yeah, with remember Jed Clampett and Granny and Ellie Mae and Jethro Bodine, right? Well, he lives in their house, the house that they filmed that show in. It's 750 Bel Air Road, Bel Air, California. It's next to Beverly Hills. It's above Holmby Hills. It's all the same place. Holmby Hills, Beverly Hills, and Bel Air, they're all, the same place. It's just that they cordon them off. But do you know how many bathrooms that house has? It's a big mansion. Just take a wild guess how many bathrooms. Lachlan Murdoch lives there with his wife. There's two people. Yeah. And guess how many bathrooms they have?
24.
28. That's a lot. So you have parties, right? And it's gated, and the next door neighbor was Ronald Reagan. After he was president of the United States, he got the house next to that home, a smaller home. Ronald Reagan's home was smaller than the Lachlan Murdoch home. I'd say it's about 1/3 the size, 1/3. It's 2/3 smaller. Then next to Ronald Reagan was Jerry Lewis, who that's not his real name, the Jewish comedian. He's from New Jersey originally. Anyway, that's the three people. It was Jerry Lewis, Ronald Reagan, and the Beverly Hillbillies home, which didn't really have a permanent owner. It was like a party house, and they would use it to do, sequels or, glamorous parties. But, and I don't know how many days Lachlan Murdoch spends there. I don't think I'd want to live in a home. It's probably around 25,000 square feet, something like that. It's really, really big. 28 bathrooms means it's got to have like 20 bedrooms. It's like a hotel. But anyway, I don't think there's a lot going on that property. That property looks, if you look at the back window or from the swimming pool, the cement pond, it looks directly over where Abigail Folger and Sharon Tate were murdered. It's 1,000 meters from the backyard of Lachlan Murdoch. If Lachlan Murdoch looks out his back window, he's looking at a murder scene of 5 people. So isn't that romantic that he and his wife can have candlelight dinners, and right behind him is 5 people got murdered by bayonets, by military bayonets in 1969. Anyway, but how about continue on with your local area of you got a lot of immigrants, And then you're saying also there's some hooliganism or crime in the streets, or burglaries or robberies, things of that nature?
Well, yeah, I think, and like I say, I'm not saying these things to cast judgment one way or the other as a political,
No,
antidote.
it's
That seems
okay.
to just be
It's a juxtaposition show. You can say whatever you want. Just
yeah.
tell your story.
This just seems to be the main topics of conversation of late. But I guess from a semi-autobiographical perspective, I'm trying to determine the best solution to it as well. And where I'm kind of stuck at the moment is that, I could see myself living an hour and a half out of the city in the kind of like areas of hillside greenery that we have here. But I don't know whether that's quite far enough for homesteading and that type of thing, that I was looking as the potential, not solution, but, partial antidote to some of the violence going on in the city. And I think that's where I'm at the moment. I've met sort of quote unquote survivalists here who are 3 or 4 hours out of the city on, flat terrain. And I worry that I would find that too socially isolating. But I don't know whether, an hour out of the city in the hillside terrain is having one foot in one camp and one foot in the other, and that really one needs to commit to one course of action if they want to do the full independent, homesteading, ungovernable solution.
Yeah, it's my youngest brother who is a Marine. He talks like you, and he's trained. Was an officer, first lieutenant in the Marines. But I have to say, if it was a war, I think my brother would be an early casualty, because that's not going to work, because you need water and you need electricity or energy. You could have a squirrel running on a treadmill. You could do stuff like that. But the rural areas are 24/7 tracked and traced. Every dirt road, every goat trail, they've got, with the mesh network now, every millimeter of every farm, of every potential farm, of every lake, every creek, every place you'd go fishing, every place you go hunting for deer or elk or buffalo or kangaroo, every millimeter, not centimeter, millimeter, is recorded 24/7 now, because we have enough satellites, CubeSats. There we have tens of thousands of those in space. In 1983, I did a pave pause tour on a NATO airbase. In 1983, I asked how many satellites were there in low Earth orbit over the Earth in 1983. And they were quick to answer me. They said that there are 25,000 objects larger than a basketball orbiting the Earth. And I said, okay, and how many of them work? He said, about 10%, about 2,500 things actually function. I said, so what's the other stuff? He goes, it's junk. It's just space junk. It doesn't work anymore. I said, so what's going to happen to you? He goes, well, it's all coming back. It's all coming back. And he says, we have mostly oceans in the world. So most of it's going to land in the ocean, the Indian Ocean or the Atlantic or Pacific or the South Pole. So who cares? But some of it occasionally is going to land on your kitchen table in a house. And then your house probably going to burn down because there's going to be a fire. But he said 99% of it's going to land in the desert or ocean. So not to worry. And I said, oh, that's fascinating. But anyway, the point is that if you're rural, they can cut off your water and your food using neuromodulation. Or I just did a video that I do recommend everybody watch. And it's called Net-Centric Cognitive Neuroscience Electronic Warfare. And I'm not joking around. I'll say it again. It's net-centric cognitive neuroscience electronic warfare. And it's part of, if you ever want to read the United Nations, NATO, which is one of the important agencies of NATO, is war making. They have an office in the House of Peace in Geneva, Switzerland. And they have a war doctrine that the United Nations has an agency on how to wage war. I hope that doesn't surprise anyone. You know that the United Nations also is in charge of the Geneva Convention, which is the rights and privileges of a prisoner of war. And I'm here to suggest to you that we are all prisoners of war in a Swiss Hunger game, and that the policies of prisoners, which would be us, is determined in Geneva, Switzerland. And they also are in charge of military martial law courts. They call it Maritime Law Tribunal. That also is headquartered in Geneva under the United Nations tutelage. But they have the NATO has their own war doctrine. And the priority of how to wage war in the 21st century, which we're in now, is net-centric cognitive neuroscience electronic warfare. Now, the electronic's a little bit of a deception because electronic not only means EMF, electronic magnetic frequency or resonance, magnetic resonance, like an MRI machine, but it also means photonic weapons, optogenetic weapons, LED streetlight weapons, LED headlight weapons, and it means the sun, weaponizing the sun, harvesting the sun, bouncing it off all of the aluminum chalk pollution in the sky, redirecting it to augment the DNA of human beings, which is called gene splicing, also known as innovative genomics, also known as Frankenstein monstering, damaging people, giving them cancer under the guise that it's precision medicine to cure cancer. If you can cure cancer, it sure as hell can give you cancer too. It's called radiation pulsing poisoning, and it's radiation poisoning. It's CRISPR, continuous interspaced palindromic repeats. That's CRISPR. That's neuromodulation. That's molecular engineering. That's sub-millimeter wave, microwave, just like a microwave, but 1,000 times smaller, but 10 million more pulsing, smaller pulse waves. The waves are shorter. It's like surfing, but you're surfing on small waves that are just continuous. CRISPR, continuous interspaced waves. And that's what NATO in Switzerland has decided. That's how they're going to wage war. And who is the enemy? And I would suggest to you that we're the enemy, the citizens of the world. Like, was the My Lai massacre an example of armed people who were killed? No, it's pregnant women, and retired men and children got shot with M16 rifles and bayoneted, and hand grenades thrown into their homes and exploded. And by 300 United States NATO soldiers, 300 soldiers, 100 went into the village, 200 made sure no one escaped on the perimeter. In other words, a secured perimeter. Now, you don't need to have a secured perimeter in Australia because it's such a huge open space, right? So you think, oh, I'm safe because it's so vast. But I'm wondering if there's water everywhere in Australia, because I think a lot of places, they don't have any water. So the land is only valuable if you can have water also. And so we have that problem in California. We have all this land that no one's using, but there's no water there. So it's like, who cares? So the military drops bombs on it because they use it for target practice. But you see, that's a secured perimeter. When they encircle where you live and they control the water in and around where you live, then they can control you and they can shoo you out of there into a detention facility. All right. So, but I completely, empathize with your situation, your plight, because if you're unhappy with the social unrest and the people who live in your city, where does one go? Where can you escape the madness? Get away from what I call the madding crowd, that the crowd is mad. And my instinct, and probably yours, is you want to get away from crazy people. And I do too. And some of those crazy people are in my own family, which makes a real conundrum for, summer barbecues or holiday get-togethers. I don't want to have a debate with someone on mandated vaccine policies. I mean, because I've made my decision on that, and it's really not up for debate anymore. That we did debate it. There was really never a debate. It was either you're for or against, and nothing's changed. All the people who promoted it, they're still for it, and all the people who were repulsed by it, they're still against it. And it's just a line in the sand. So we talk about other topics. You talk about other things like sports, like the World Cup, right? Or the Olympics, whoop-de-doo. That's part of the show. the circus to distract us from solving social issues like your town. But anyway, continue. I cut you off a little bit there, but do you have maybe just sum up your situation within your city and the fact that you're going to have an election soon, and what does it all mean, Steve?
Yeah, I guess just to follow on from your previous point, a lot of the the billionaires seem to be buying up properties around New Zealand and Australia. I know Zuckerberg had one, and I think Bezos potentially has one in New Zealand as well. So I don't know if that's a clue as to where things are heading, and we should take subsequent steps.
Well,
or whether
they're private. They're private. It's going to private property. They want to convert public land to private. Donald Trump signed the big beautiful bill that sold. Almost 50% of all public land in the United States will be sold to the banks. Now, when you say Zuckerberg or those guys have no money, so they're not buying anything. Also, they're not intelligent people, and no one is depending on them to roll out Agenda 2030 for Switzerland. Bankers do that. So now they don't want you to know what bankers are actually buying the land. So they'll say Mark Zuckerberg, they'll say Larry Ellison, they'll say some name like that you'll recognize. I can assure you that Larry Ellison is making no decisions at Warner Brothers or real estate in Malibu. He owns a bunch of property in Malibu also. And he didn't decide. That property is sitting there vacant. He bought restaurants that are boarded up and are closed. Why would a billionaire buy a bunch of active restaurants and close them down? And the answer is he wouldn't. But a banker would. And so Larry Ellison's banker is telling Larry Ellison what to do. With Switzerland considers that money theirs. It's not his. They want to use his name, and that's what they do. That's why they promote these scapegoats. Charlie Manson didn't have a bank account. He had no money, but he's more famous than Mark Zuckerberg. More people recognize Charlie Manson. He doesn't even have a penny, but he was the highest paid inmate in California State Prison. Charlie Manson. Who's more important in prison? Charlie Manson's way more important. He's the number one guy. He made like $300,000 a year in the 70s and 80s because everybody wanted to interview him. And Charlie doesn't do free interviews. And the warden doesn't do free interviews. The warden splits everything more or less 50-50 with Charlie. So the warden's 100% supporting Charlie Manson because you get the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip for your children. If you got Charlie Manson in your prison, you're going to quadruple your salary having that guy in your prison. He's the best thing that could ever happen to you. So that's what they use these people for. That's what they use Larry Ellison for. He's a college dropout. He doesn't know anything about software or databases. And Mark Zuckerberg, he's a dropout from Harvard. He doesn't know anything about social media. Apparently ripped up. The idea was already conceived of. His roommates knew more about it than he did. But Steve Jobs, a dropout. He never graduated. He barely got out of high school. He couldn't create a $2 trillion company called Apple. But that's what he's like a Charlie Manson. They just create him for the media. But in real life, he's not running Apple. He doesn't know anything about he doesn't even know what a circuit board is. You weren't here, but we did a video with a guy who spent 30 minutes with Steve Jobs and his purchasing agent, and Steve Jobs looking at the ceiling the whole time, bored out of his mind, when they were talking about his first computer named after the child that he said didn't belong to him, and then later said she did. Lisa, the first computer at Apple was Lisa, and that our guy, Mark, sat down with him to talk about what kind of circuit boards we'd put in Lisa, and Steve Jobs had zero interest in the subject and deferred everything to the older adult, who was like 46-year-old engineer. And that guy made all the decisions. And he placed an order for $2 million with our guy on the Juxtaposition show. And Steve Jobs had no input whatsoever into a $2 million transaction. That was in the 1970s when $2 million was a lot of money. And Steve Jobs, who was the president at the time, he had no interest in the money or how much or what's right. He doesn't know. He's just, I'm here for appearances. He's a clown. He's like, get back in the backseat of the truck. All right. So you see, so whether it's tornadoes or whether it's windstorms, which I have in my area north of this bridge, this is the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm not far from this bridge. I'm about 25 miles north of this bridge. And we have windstorms here quite a bit. None of that's normal. We never had windstorms really ever. And now we have them weekly, and went from none to tons, dozens. And whether it's, your vegetable garden being treated like the Sahara Desert because it dries out so quickly because of the wind, or whether it's hooligans and burglaries and robberies in your town, these are all highly disturbing, disrupting events, which will cause people to consider moving or relocating. And soon here, where I live, 40 miles to the east, they're opening a California Forever city, where the license says they have a permit for 400,000 residents. It'll be open in about 2 years from now, maybe 18 months. Now they lie. They're going to go back and get a new upgrade on that. They're going to put 1 million people in. And those people will be all the homeless people from the San Francisco Bay Area who can't afford to pay rent, who don't have a job, and they'll put them in there. Anyone who's displaced or a home burned down to a grass fire, or, they're older and they're on retirement pay and the stock market blows to smithereens, which could happen at any moment, or the bond market locks up and you can't redeem your deposit, which could happen at any moment. The bond market is 1,000 times larger than the stock market. The bond market is the credit market. That's what money is. Credit is money. So if they freeze up the bond market, that means they're going to freeze money up. And if they freeze money up, and whether you have a job or whether you're retired, you can't buy groceries if everything's locked up. So now you have a real crisis. You have not only, violence in the street, you got dumpster diving. Then you got no deliveries to the grocery store because the truckers aren't going to get paid, so they're not going to deliver. The farmers are not going to get paid by their brokers, so they're just going to let the food die in the field. Now you have a starvation problem. Now you have a social unrest problem. Thank goodness we have these FEMA camps, right, which is Federal Emergency Management Agency prison camps. And every military base, I was told by Dave Gregg back in 1975, he told me when I said, well, how is it going to take forever to build all these prisons? He goes, no, in 12 hours, you can open a FEMA camp. I said, how do you do it? He goes, you got to bring the porta potties in. But he goes, every elementary school, every high school, every junior college, every college campus, every military base, every Coast Guard base, you can put tents up, and as long as you got the porta potties, bingo, detention facility. As fast as you could put the tent up. And they all have the equipment and they all have the porta potties. They're just waiting for the go code. And if you want to bring buses in of prisoners who are fleeing tornadoes, hurricanes, hooliganism, their home burning down, a mudslide, a hailstorm, and you bring them all in there, then they lock the gate. And it's like the Roach Motel. People check in, but they never check out. That's part of the plan, Steve. That's part of NATO's war doctrine. And they're going to have every single person, tethered to the cloud one way or the other. Without a cell phone, you'll be tethered. We're already tethered to the cloud now, because if you have a pulse and you have a heartbeat and a brainwave, the Raytheon missile guidance system can get a signature on you. And then Jennifer Doudna and her CRISPR product, they ID you on your DNA. Each person has their own unique identification. That's your real ID. And then they like to verify it, because right now they can get everybody's signature, but they haven't got it verified. But if you go volunteer to get a real ID and you volunteer to give up your personal information, then they assign a MAC address, right? Media Access Control, MAC, just like your cell phone has a MAC address, your laptop has one, and we have one. And you don't just have one, you can have 36 MAC addresses that have your social security number, your passport number, your birth date will be baked into that to verify who you are, what province you belong to, what your stated address is, where we mail your bank statements, what address. That'll be in your real ID, verified. And that not everybody's verified now. But every single person on this planet is already traced and tracked or tethered. And but you see what they're doing is they want to herd us into high concentration areas. They don't really like the idea that you have, which is that you want to go to a remote area and an hour to 90 minutes away from town and just be left alone. They don't like that idea. I like that idea. That's a wonderful idea. It's a little lonely. But the problem is they don't like that. They want you in the downtown area where they can keep tabs on you.
We had a bit of a canary in the coal mine situation here of late. It's quite a high profile story where there's like a movement called the Sovereign Citizen Movement. And there was a guy who was a figurehead of that. And a couple of police came to arrest him on what was supposedly a child endangerment charge or something like that. Anyway, he ended up shooting them both dead. He went on the run in like the hillside, national parks, etc. here.
Yes.
It took him about three months to catch him because he was obviously
3 months. That's a long time.
They caught him in a converted shipping container house at the property of someone else who was part of this movement. So I think that's kind of become our canary in the coal mine as to how much oversight is currently at the disposal of our authorities here. But
they should actually be able to capture people within 30 minutes. So it's kind of I don't believe the 3 months unless he was plugged in because in America, we have all these stories about people going missing and then turning up later. And those are all bullshit stories. Okay. Nobody's going missing, but the media can simulate a missing person story. We always have multiple missing person stories going on, and most of them are hoaxes because if they want to find you, they can. That's the words of William Colby. And he said those words back in 1976, 77. He told someone that was writing a book when they visited him at his retirement home. He has a fishing cabin at Rock Point, Maryland, on the river that rolls through the Potomac River that rolls through Washington, D.C. And about 65 miles, 100 kilometers south of Washington, D.C. is this little fishing place there on the Potomac River. And he had a little sailboat. There's a little yacht club. It's a municipal yacht club near him. And this author went to go ask him questions and have a beer. And when they sat down, he said, "Hey, how come you don't have more security on your front door?" He says, "You just have, a chain lock and a key." He says, this cabin is like anybody could get in here. And he said, "Oh, it doesn't matter." He says, "This place could be Fort Knox." He goes, "If they want," this is what he said in 1976. And he was the CIA director during the Watergate cleanup years. He was the CIA director. He said, if military intelligence wants to find you, it doesn't matter what your security is. They're getting in because they'll have the passcode. So if you need a cipher code to get in here or a palm print recognition, they'll have all that. They have that in your dossier. And so they'll simulate, they'll get total access 24/7 to your property, come in here, kidnap you, murder you, torture you, whatever they want to do. So he says, there's no point in me wasting my money with a better lock. It's like they get right in. And then they did. Then about a year after he said that, they kidnapped him, put him I believe they put him in an ice chest for 9 days, and then redeposited him on a gravel beach at the end of Rock Point Road, where the Navy SEALs spent 4 days operating out of that same beach. They put him exactly where the headquarters for the Navy SEALs were. That was like a FU to the Navy SEALs. Like, you guys couldn't find a body. I dumped it right where you guys had your radio center. But they did that on purpose because, like, we had him across the estuary, probably at a Franciscan Catholic church in the basement. And then when you guys were done and you abandoned the search, when the search was declared over, then we placed his pristine body, and he was found after he went missing for 9 days, right? But he was never lost. He was never lost. But for purposes of television, it looked like he went missing for 9 days. But in real life, somebody knew where he was all the time, but they didn't tell. So I think people know where people are. We have a high school coach in Virginia who's been missing for 3 months now, who's wanted for sex crimes with under 18-year-old kids at the high school. And he's gone into the forest in the Appalachian Mountains, which he's walked from his house right into the forest. And he's been gone for 90 days. And there's no way he could do that unless, he has help and there's people backing him up. And but they can trace and track him. He may or may not be vaccinated, but so he may not be verified, but they can find him. They know everything that moves in the Appalachian Mountain Forest. They could find him if they want to. A military helicopter could go find him, or a drone, just like that. But they won't do it. They want to create this drama that, oh my God, the coach is outsmarting the FBI. Now, the FBI does their toothless German Shepherd. Didn't they? Aren't they still looking for the Zodiac killer? They haven't found him yet. It's only been 60 years. They're still looking for him. They didn't find DB Cooper. Where's DB Cooper? I don't know. Still looking for him. That's 50-year-old story. I've been looking for this guy for 50 years. Can't find him. That's the FBI. They never find their man on purpose. Mm-hmm. All right. So what's our next subject that we should go to? We got all of these things to get us out of our hamlets and moving closer to our detention facility. So we got police, ICE troops. We got ICE troops now who wear masks. They wear black masks. Then we got this business of let's talk about the data centers. We'll do Iskander last. Let's do the data center stuff. So now, Shirley, you said water. Michael Brooks and I are looking at that. We don't see any legitimate reason why a mega data center or any data center would need water ever. Yeah. So this water has nothing to do with the data center, but the media is linking water usage and data centers. But there's no correlation between water and data centers. There's this kind of a cover story, because I've been in hundreds of data centers my entire career. Bank of America, Wells Fargo Bank, data centers, National Cash Register, NCR, IBM, Lockheed, everyone, all these big corporations and little companies have computers. The hospital I worked at, we had a data center. And the only thing that struck me was air conditioning. It was like going into a wine cellar. The room was cool. It wasn't like a refrigerator, but it was like a wine cellar. They maintain a set cool temperature in a room, but they didn't use any water at all. They used electricity to run the AC and the fans. They had fans. Go ahead.
That's so interesting that you say that, because when I was just briefly looking at some things online, there was someone in one of their town hall meetings saying, water is not the issue. That's a big hoax. And it's just, they want to take our water. You're going to take my well water. I know it. And so it got me thinking, like, is that true? So I'm so happy that you said that, because that's what they're saying. That's the story.
Yeah, well, it's like saying that we're all going to die of COVID, so we need to get an untested vaccine. One thing has nothing to do with the other. I mean, they're not correlated. If you have an experimental thing and you haven't tested it, you don't know if it works or not. And you see what the NATO and WHO is coming out with? They're coming out with a universal vaccine. For what? For everything. How can you have a vaccine that protects you against things we don't even know that don't exist yet? But we got a vaccine for something that you'll need, like what? Frog warts? Yeah, I got a vaccine. It covers frog warts. Isn't that like the Wild Wild West when people came out to California and there was always some charlatan with a wagon, and he would go town to town and he'd open the back of his wagon and he was the traveling salesman, and he had hair dye, and then he had an elixir. This will cure your sore throat. If you get cancer, it'll cure that. If your wife left you, it'll cure that. What's the difference between a hurricane, a tornado, and an ex-wife? And the answer, nothing, because the ex-wife gets it all. They always get the house. right? Hurricane, tornado, ex-wife. They always get the house. And he would have an elixir of, ex-wife cure for your ex-wife, cure
So
for
does
well, that's what the World Health Organization has become. A charlatan that pitches Excelsior. It's basically, water with some carbonation in it. And they tell you it's cough syrup. You know what Rogaine, hair loss for men, Rogaine, what that was when it was created? It was cough medicine. Then somebody accidentally must have spilled it on a mouse and the mouse grew more hair. And they went, whoa, look, it's hair loss medicine. No, it's cough syrup. So they rebranded it.
What else does it cause, though? Yeah.
Well, who cares,
Makes
right?
you sick, but you have long hair.
Lipitor prevents heart attacks. A $2 billion a year business based on a lie. It does not. There's no correlation between your cholesterol level and heart disease. No relationship whatsoever. And they build a $2 billion business selling something that modifies your liver to produce fewer cholesterol enzymes. And it messes with your liver. It doesn't have anything to do with your cholesterol.
They really push. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that my experience is doctors really, really, really push anti-cholesterol medicine, and I just protested. But anyway, I just wanted to add my 2 cents.
I had a long conversation with one of Lance Armstrong's sports medicine doctors, and about Lipitor and Pfizer and believe me, he actually knows what he's talking about. And his thesis was based on cholesterol in the university in Italy, where he went to Padova University and he got he's a medical licensed doctor. He's one of the few sports doctors who's actually a medical doctor. He actually has the credentials. And it's not necessary to be a doctor to be a doping doctor. You can use drugs without a license. They all do it. But he actually had a license and he distributed drugs to the athletes, 100%. Blood doping, testosterone, corticosteroids, morphine, amphetamines, cocaine, caffeine, all injectable products. And also gelatins too. But when he told me about the fraud that is Lipitor, he says, the problem is once you create a $1 billion industry, you can't tell a salesperson that he's not going to go on a fishing junket to Cancun because he doesn't care if it works or not. It's like, I get all this bonus money. And that's how doctors think too. If they push anti-cholesterol drugs, it's because they're going to get paid extra dough. And if they push vaccines for children, it's because they're going to get paid extra money. If you took the money away, they wouldn't mention it. They don't talk about exercise. They don't talk about diet and food choices because they don't get paid. They don't get paid. If they did, they would, but they don't get paid. They only talk about what pays them. That's very simple. All right. So
and how do you navigate through all that? We all, at one point or another, it's a difficult thing with yourself and family. It's one of those things, I guess, try to educate ourselves as much as possible.
Yeah, well, you have to. I mean, I don't know, because you could call balderdash and poppycock and everything, but all you do is you infuriate the majority of people because they think you're crazy, that they think you have 3 heads. They think that you're an alien, a space alien. Because the programming, as Steve mentioned in the pre-show, people who get their information from the cable television or British broadcasting company or Australian or American television are completely misinformed. And they actually believe all that propaganda. They believe it to be true. And of course, this is after being lied to. If you're 50 or 60 years old, you've been lied to millions of times. And after being millions of times lied to by television and radio and newspapers, you would think that you would wake up and say, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. But they don't. They embrace it. And like the more you lie to them, the more they enjoy the lying. That's my personal experience. And I find it to be completely gobsmacking. I wouldn't say that I understand anything about what I just said. I don't know why it is. It just is.
Well, I mean, just with the Lipitor, I had heard also that it caused, not Lipitor, but I mean, just having low cholesterol. It's important to have cholesterol, and you can actually be senile.
Yes, cholesterol is essential to proper health. Cholesterol is important. So, like, people that are devout Catholics, they believe in the Pope. Well, the Pope's a dope. Okay, it's Pope Leo. It's Pope Leo. Who's he guarded by? Swiss guards. But isn't the Vatican in Rome? Is that in Italy? No, it's in Switzerland. The Vatican is a Swiss bank. It's called the Bank of Vatican. And the only reason it exists is because it's a banking facility. And it is a city-state. It's a city-state. Like Monte Carlo is a city-state also. San Remo, Luxembourg, there are many, the Dutch Antilles, Grand Cayman Accounting. These are all what we call tax havens. It means if you have an account in this facility, there's no taxing authority that can ever levy a tax against your account. Your interest will be tax-free. Your investments, any income on your investments are tax-free. That's why wealthy people have accounts in tax havens. But isn't it interesting that the flag of the Vatican is shaped in the form of a pyramid, is it not? The power of the pyramid. And isn't it interesting that they have an obelisk, an 83-foot obelisk in the center of St. Peter's Square stands the chain of command of obedience and code of omerta silence is walking distance. It's a baseball throw away from where this photograph was taken. And Pope Leo spoke Monday last. He spoke on disabling the artificial intelligence. He called it in his letter to his bishops. He also repeated it at the Synod Hall in St. Peter, off St. Peter's Square, at the next to the Basilica in the Vatican City. He calls it his encyclical letter. He names the speech Magnifica Humanitas, that the magnificence of humanity. And so, because he's concerned about the human beings and how magnificent we all are, he wants to disable the AI. The problem that I got with Pope Leo here is that he does not know that the AI runs on a platform, and the platform is ring cameras, smart dust, 6G terahertz. It's molecular engineering, CRISPR. It's hyperledger systems. It's dossiers, which can be held and found in data centers in a personal dossier of a real ID verified account number, kind of like a Swiss bank account. So the Pope is a dope, because you cannot disable the AI unless you disable the mesh network on which the AI runs. It's like saying, I don't believe in trains. Well, then tear up the railroad tracks. If you tear up the railroad tracks, then the trains won't work. Duh. But the Pope wants you to boycott trains while the military runs them 24/7, because nobody's going near that railroad track. They also run communication wires along the railroad tracks too, don't they? Yeah, well, that's what they used to do. The railroad track was a radio frequency telegram system, right? Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley and Oakland was because they ran communications from the Port of Oakland to the University of California, Berkeley, along Telegraph Avenue. And they named the street Telegraph Avenue. That takes you to Sather Gate, which is the entrance to the University of California. It's a radio frequency military facility. That's why they were running communication lines there. They were running that and had rail trains running there too, because it's a military facility, that the university is a military facility. And I got news for you. All universities are military outposts. All universities, not just Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Massachusetts Institute of Technology, not just Tulane University, not just Stanford and Stanford Research Institute, not just Frankfurt School in Frankfurt, Germany, not just Cambridge, Massachusetts, not just them, not just King's College along the River Thames there in North London, not just King's College, all colleges in Canada, Montreal, Quebec, Ontario, British Columbia, all universities are plugged into the military, and they are indoctrinating their children. And the chancellors and the professors are NATO soldiers, just like your doctors and your nurses are. And when Shirley says, how do you navigate? It's a $20 million question. It's like Rose the other day when we were covering the Scott Erickson and Rebecca Grossman, multi-million dollar, $176 million civil judgment before punitive damages were added. Rose asked the $20 million question. So where's the money coming from? And so we're going to touch on that because that's the whole point, because I don't know where the money's coming from, because I don't think you could squeeze these people like lemons and they're going to produce the money required. Now, Shirley's saying, how do you navigate? Okay, well, it's like stump the professor. I don't know. You can alienate every doctor, every college professor, every priest, every Catholic priest, every Mormon, every LDS Mormon that comes to your home that wants to talk about Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. You're going to alienate him. You're going to get a loaded gun and chase him off your property. What about the Jehovah Witnesses that come and knock on my door? What about them? What about Hare Krishnas asking you for money at the airport? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, right? What about Jim Jones and People's Temple? I mean, there's no shortage of Church of Scientology people or celebrity influencers who will put their hand out for you to take money from because they want to indoctrinate you into their belief system. And then they'll say that I'm the same, that I'm like the Pope. I'm like Pope Leo. But I'm not here to promote stupid concepts like the AI. The AI is just one more layer of use of the weapon system. It's the whole architecture that I want disabled, right? So anyway, that's what I was going to talk about next, was this business of the fact that the AI is, it runs on a dogma. They're kind of replaced the Pope with the HAL 9000, right? That the AI, we all worship the AI. Hollywood just came out with a film. Steve, did you know Hollywood just came out with a film a few months ago called Mercy? It's about mercy courts. And it goes to what you were talking about earlier, which is that there could be civil unrest in our cities. This was having to do with, in the year 2030, there's lawlessness and robberies going on throughout the city and county of Los Angeles. So as a result of that, they'd overwhelmed the judicial system. So they decided to use the AI and create mercy courts where you're arrested, locked into a chair, and your entire life is then played before you in the form of your dossier. And then the charges are read out that you are suspected in a murder or a violent robbery. And then you have to defend yourself before the computer. And I'm not joking around about that. So what do you say about that, Jennifer? Because I got a little technical problem I got to fix. Why don't you take over? Jennifer?
Yeah, I was muted. I had to unmute myself.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm not. I think the whole idea of a mercy court with an AI judge is futuristic. It's not quite here yet. It's frankly, it's not something I'm that versed or passionate about talking about at the moment. I shouldn't say I'm not passionate, but it seems very futuristic, science fiction-ish.
Yeah, it'll probably take at least another 18 months before we get those.
Yes.
It's not too far out in the future, but look, if everybody goes to cryptocurrency Real ID, then the judge will be your money, your wallet, your digital wallet, Steve. Mm-hmm. In other words, you don't have to prove you're innocent, but if you buy something online or pay for something online that we don't agree with, like subscribing to my channel, for example, that it'll be declined. That's an example of a judiciary babysitting your life, saying how you can use your money, that they don't approve of your judgment, that your judgment isn't sound. So as a result, that your transaction will be denied. Or if you wanted to buy a carton of cigarettes at the liquor store, Steve, and they think that smoking is not in your best interest, so they'll deny your purchase of cigarettes or chewing gum. Maybe they don't think chewing gum is good for you, so they'll deny it. That's an example, Jennifer, of having a computer judge judging your transaction decision. It doesn't have to be a crime. It's just that they don't agree with how you're spending your money, so they'll decline the transaction.
I've gotten a little this is kind of related to it. I get these notifications from the gas company, but they don't think I'm using my gas efficiently, and I'm not as good as my neighbors. Now, I'm doing very well with my electricity. I get like a good grade on that, but I'm getting graded by my utility companies about how well I'm using my utilities. And that kind of creeps me out. Like, I'm paying my bills. I'm a good citizen. I'm not extravagant. I have an old house and it's hard to heat, so my gas goes up. And they're just telling me I'm being a bad girl, and I don't like it. Don't tell me I'm being a bad girl. So I don't know if that's the same as an AI judge, but it's sort of Big Brother looking at me.
Yes. Rose, what do you think about that? Did you see my post regarding mercy courts?
I did. I haven't seen the movie. I have a cousin who is a judge here in Ontario Superior Court. She told me, she said, you won't believe what's coming down the pipeline. And she's about 4 years from retirement. She can't wait to retire. But yeah, truly, she cannot wait to retire.
Oh my goodness.
It's actually very scary. I mean, the fact that movie is out, I'd like to see it, but I think it's telling us something, and I feel very apprehensive about it, of course.
Well, spoiler alert, I haven't seen the movie either. I saw the trailer to it. It's a fairly complicated story about a policeman accused of killing his own wife. Okay. And the judge, the AI judge, is a female person. This is a computer, but has a female face and voice. Now, during the course of the trial, which does not have a jury, and you are not allowed, you don't have a lawyer. There's no defense lawyer. There's just you and the judge. It's what's called a bench trial. It's a bench trial. It's you and the judge. That's a bench trial. That's what a mercy court is, called a bench trial. There's no lawyers, which is amazing. There's no lawyers. There's no jury. There's just you and the judge. And when the computer made a couple mistakes and the policeman pointed it out to her, the judge, what happened was the judge froze and then had to reset and said, we must wait 90 seconds because I got to reset the software because I had to reboot. In other words, the judge couldn't deal with making a mistake, so it had to be rebooted. Then they had to start kind of before where they left off because the computer deleted the last communications because it got rebooted and lost on reboot. So it's like having a computer at work and you're working late at night and your stupid computer locks up. I'm like, damn, I'm almost done. I want to print this, right? Well, that's kind of happens in the court where the judge implodes because it does not compute, must reboot, can't have a dialogue with a computer. But anyway, that's that. So what I think this is a good transition to this gentleman that's behind me here. This is Brian Panish, right? We've been talking about him for 7 weeks. He is the defense personal injury lawyer. He's the personal injury lawyer of the Iskander family, who had 4 children at the time. The two eldest children were killed in a crosswalk at dusk. It was pretty dark. It was not pitch dark, though. It was just dark. But there were, I believe, 7 LED streetlights, and the crosswalk was well illuminated, and nobody else had a problem with the lighting. And there were 2 people, Scott Erickson, who was 52 years old. He's a alcoholic, although he'll deny it. He's unquestionably an alcoholic and comes from an alcoholic family. And he was a professional baseball player on steroids and never graduated from high school. He did graduate from high school. He went to Homestead High School in Sunnyvale, which I ran track at that high school. So I know the school that he went to high school. I'm a little older than him, so we weren't there together at the same time. But I know where he went to high school, in Sunnyvale, near Lockheed Martin. And you should know that he went to University of Arizona. I believe that's in Tempe, Arizona, I think. And he went there for 3 years and undoubtedly received gifts from the boosters. And then he was recruited to play in Major League Baseball by the Minnesota Twins, recruited him out of University of Arizona, Phoenix or Tempe. And he went there. And then he went to, very quickly, by the age of 23, he's pitching in the World Series and won a game of the World Series and Minnesota Twins won the World Series. So now he has a World Series ring, and he did all that by age 23. So that catapulted him. Then he did about 15 years in Major League Baseball. Then he became a celebrity golfer, that would go to corporate outings, play golf with the corporate executives, and worked trying to do some play-by-play radio podcasts, radio broadcasts for college baseball. And he tried to make some films. He married a beautiful woman in the sports media. They lived at Lake Tahoe for a while and then got divorced. It was like a 5-6 year marriage. And then he never remarried after that. And he seemed to like to date married ladies. So he met Rebecca Grossman in the San Fernando Valley at a charity golf event. And then they had a whirlwind romance for 9 months, whereupon they drank margaritas. This is coming after an afternoon of drinking beer by himself alone and with Royce Clayton. Then they drank the equivalent of 4 margaritas. Rebecca drank a grand total of 3 margaritas, and Scott drank 4 margaritas. He had 2 grandes, and a grande is a double. And then they got in their souped up high performance AMG Mercedes vehicles, which are capable of going 160 miles an hour, have 600 horsepower. Well, they're different models, so they have slightly different horsepower, but they both have, I think Rebecca has 400 horsepower, which is more than my Corvette had. And he has 550 horsepower, which is tremendous. Anyway, they start racing from the Julio's Agave Grill and going 85 miles an hour on roads that are 35 to 45. And they go 2 miles to where they come to a crosswalk in a residential area with a 45 mile an hour speed limit. And they go through the crosswalk, they're at 85. They take the foot off the throttle, go through the crosswalk at 73 miles per hour. And Scott narrowly hits Nancy Iskander, who's the mother, who's leading her 4 children across the crosswalk. But then Rebecca is 2.5 seconds behind, pursuing and chasing him in a speed contest. After they're boozed up with doesn't really matter if they're drinking or not. They're going 80 miles an hour in a residential neighborhood. That's a problem. And it's nighttime. It's going to be nighttime here. And so she plows into the 2 boys, killing them more or less instantaneously with her front grille. Then her airbag deploys. The car is disabled. She has to come to a stop. She attempted to restart her car 12 times to flee the scene, but the car won't start because the fuel gauge is turned off. Whenever the airbag deploys, the engine is permanently turned off until you detach the airbag and reset the computer. Scott goes to the house, which is really close. It's within 1,000 meters away where they were headed for Taco Tuesday to have more alcohol and watch the presidential meaningless debate of Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And they killed 2 kids before they got there. They were only 90 seconds away from the driveway where they were going. They're under 2 minutes away from their destination, but they kill 2 kids. And I say they because they're acting in concert. They're racing together. You can't, they weren't racing by themselves. They were racing each other. But Scott gets lucky because he doesn't hit anybody. He almost hits the mother with Zachary, her youngest child, who was 5 years old. She almost hit. It looks like he hit Zachary's scooter, but we can't tell that, Steve, because what he did was he switched license plates on his car, hid the car in the garage of another friend in a different city, and the police never got to inspect that car for a year. And by that time, that car had been serviced so many times and gone through repairs that it's impossible to know whether the front fog lamp had been replaced or not. So, in other words, he hid the evidence, he concealed the evidence, he lied to police, he fled the scene, and he was charged with reckless driving. But the criminal judge dropped those charges for no reason, and it's very strange. Rebecca was found guilty of 2 second-degree murders. They charged her not a manslaughter, but 2 murders, and she was sentenced to 15 years to life imprisonment. She's in Chowchilla Women's Prison out in Madera County or Fresno County, which I happen to know that area because I did multiple bike races right at the front gate of that women's prison. So I really know that women's prison perimeter. I have not been past the gate, but I do know exactly where it's located. That's where Rebecca is. It's also where Patricia Krenwinkel has been for the last 60 years. She's been in that Chowchilla prison. So then we had the civil case, which followed about 18 months to 2 years later. And that was a 7-week trial. And the jury found $198 million and change, $198.1 million to be divided between Scott Erickson and Rebecca Grossman and Peter Grossman, who are in a community marriage. And that's where we are. So Jennifer has followed this case with me and has enjoyed watching this Brian Panish just barbecue and roast Scott Erickson on the stand 3 different times, actually 4 if you count the punitive phase, 4 times. And the guy's a pathological liar. He cannot tell the truth. But Jennifer, how would you summarize what we learned in the civil case with these?
I think what we've learned is there are a whole lot of sleaze bags in society. That's pretty much, I mean, it's like if you rip a bandage off and you look at what's underneath, and it's like, yuck, could be in this wound. And I kept looking for redeemable people in this whole story, and it's all pretty sordid. And Juxtaposition has been educating me, but I really can't believe lawyers either. I mean, or judges, and then you have to look past their fancy robes and titles and realize they're probably got some secret deals going on so that they can get a big chunk of the money from what this is all about. The people of the highest integrity are the 2 little boys who died. They're innocents. They were true innocents. One thing I've thought a lot about this case and the people involved and the tragedy, and if they'd only left the restaurant 5 minutes later, this could never have happened, and just the horror of all of this. But one thing that strikes me is that if you look at this as sort of a metaphor for society, or a microcosm, not a metaphor, but a microcosm of society, what you see are a whole lot of people who are in their own little world. Like the 2 protagonists, Scott and Rebecca, they're in their cars. They're oblivious to their surroundings. They're oblivious to the danger they're causing. You have at the Taco Tuesday house, the 16-year-old daughter of Rebecca and Peter is by herself ordering a pizza in a house by herself. I mean, that's a very lonely situation, I think. Like, why isn't she with her friends or her family? I mean, and it's a Tuesday night, and like, why is she alone ordering pizza and all by herself in a house? Just a lonely figure to me.
She was age 16.
Yes, 16. And Peter, I don't know where he is, like, what's he up to? Like, he seems completely nonchalant about his wife was having this affair, and well, that's okay. He's going to go to his burn center or something.
I can't find his age, but I'm going to assume he's about Rebecca's age. Maybe he's 1 or 2 years older. Rebecca's 58 years old. Scott is 52 years old. They're drinking. Then they're in a car race to go home for a Taco Tuesday evening to watch the presidential debate. Talk about arrested development. This is something you'd think that a freshman in high school might do, drink and then race home so we could have tacos.
Well, and
Like,
sex.
what are they thinking?
That's what they were in the rush for. I mean, because they were in lust with each other. That's what I think. So
Okay.
they were in a hurry to get to the place. I think that was the motivation. I think it was to watch the political debate.
Yeah, I think that's a good cover story. They did miss the beginning of the debate, but they didn't care. They're really excited about getting home quick. And,
Right,
this is a second home for Rebecca, which it's actually, they owned it, she sold it and is renting it back. So at the time that this car accident happened, which was September 29, 2020 at 7:09 p.m. at twilight, at sundown, and it's in a canyon. So sundown actually happens a good 10 to 15 minutes before what it does at Malibu, when you have an ocean. So the sun does set where this accident happened at least 10 minutes early because there's a big hill that blocks the sun. And they were in a rush to get home, probably to make love. And then this happened. And then everything, and their relationship continued despite the funeral for the boys and despite the criminal charges of murder for Rebecca. And despite him having a reckless driving charge over his head for about 2 years before it was dropped, after he made umpteen phone calls to friends, is that they continued that affair up until her defense lawyers wanted to implicate him in the death of the boys. Then that was the end of the communications with Rebecca, and their romance ended when the attorneys got more involved. And this attorney behind me, who's kind of the hero of the whole story, he lied too. He lied multiple times. Brian Panish. There's not a single lawyer, not a single barrister, not a solicitor, not a lawyer who doesn't lie. They all lie, 100%. And so even though, this guy is kind of the hero of the story, he is incapable of telling the truth himself. So it was fun that he called out Scott Harrison for being a pathological liar. That's true. But he's a liar too. And he's a partner of a major law firm on Santa Monica Boulevard in Los Angeles. And he's a liar too. But that's okay. Every single lawyer in Los Angeles is a liar. So, you can't be a lawyer and tell the truth. That includes the judge, who I don't have a photograph of, Huey Cotton. What did we learn about the judiciary and having a real live judge? What did we learn from the behavior of Huey Cotton, Jennifer?
Well, that he seemed half asleep most of the time. And that the most egregious thing was that Scott was on the stand confessing to a variety of crimes, and the
7
judge
felonies.
did nothing. Yeah,
7 felonies he confessed to.
Yeah, I mean,
like, who cares?
He committed.
I killed Jack Kennedy too. I wasn't born yet, but put me down for the JFK murder.
Well, he talked about.
Go ahead. I'm not going to do nothing.
He talked about the cold plating, about switching the
plate.
That's a really serious.
Which he did hundreds of times.
That's what
over
criminals.
6 years of cold plating.
Yeah,
and he admitted that, and there's nobody said a word about it.
Right.
The judge, the district attorney didn't file charges. It's apparently in a California courtroom, you can confess to murder, and it's okay, no problem.
Well, it was Brian, and on a just a mundane level, but important level, Brian pointed out that the registration for a car like that on an annual basis was, did he say $5,000? That seems like a lot.
Well, no, probably $1,500 to $1,800 per year to register the car, and he's never paid registration on a car. He drove it off of a dealership in Phoenix, Arizona, or Scottsdale. He drove it off the dealership. Someone gave him the keys. He drove it off. Then he's been, how would you like that deal, Steve? Go on to a Mercedes dealership in your town, and I throw you the keys to a $150,000 performance AMG Mercedes race car. And you go, hey, do I owe you anything? Nah, it's on the house. Enjoy yourself. Try not to crash the car. And for 6 years, you drive that car. You don't pay, no payments. $150,000 car. Performance with bucket seats, with the racing, like Formula One racing harness. It comes with that. And you get to drive that high performance car, no charge. You got to put gas in it. But you don't own it. You can't insure the car because you don't own it. You don't have no registration. So you have dealer plates. And see, he said he did the cold plating is because he can't drive around with dealer plates for 6 years. So he switched the dealer plates off, and then he took the license plate from the car that he does own. He owns another Mercedes that's not the performance model, and he puts that plate on the car that he prefers. And then if he gets pulled over for speeding, which I'm sure he did, they'll run the plate and it comes back, he's legit, it's registered. But if you check the VIN number, that's not the car that belongs to him. That's a stolen car, except that the dealership didn't call the police and report it stolen. So really the car belongs to the bank who provide the flooring line. And they apparently didn't do an audit to see that, hey, you got a piece of equipment here that you haven't paid, you pay an interest, $700 a month in interest on that car. That's what the interest is going to be on that car, $700 a month in interest. And you've been paying interest to the bank for 5 years, and I guess they're happy because they get their interest, but the collateral has gone missing. Nobody knows where the car is. Scott's got it in a garage. He doesn't even keep it in his own garage. He keeps it in his next door neighbor's garage so that if you ever come over to see if he's been in an accident, is he's got the old car in his garage, but the car that was in the accident, he put that at his neighbor's house. And guess what? Scott doesn't own his house. No, he lives in a house in Malibu, 5,500 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 6 bath house, which is walking distance to Point Doom and Robert Kennedy Jr., Chelsea Handler, Gwyneth Paltrow, Gordon Getty's girlfriend, Cynthia Beck. They're his neighbors. And he lives in a house that's worth, I don't know, $6 million for free. It belongs to his agent. His agents let him live in the house for 3 years. And you go across the street and go surfing at Point Doom, where they filmed Planet of the Apes, and Charlton Heston's kneeling down to the Statue of Liberty. Remember that scene at the end of Planet of the Apes, 1968? The Statue of Liberty is in the sandy beach. Well, Scott goes surfing there, right there. That's across the street from his house, right there where they filmed. It's Zuma Beach. Zuma Beach. It's in Point Doom, which is technically north of Malibu, northwest. It's kind of more west than north, but everybody calls it Malibu. So let's call it Malibu, but it's technically Point Doom. It's not a city. It's an unincorporated area. And that's where the main protagonist of this story, the pathological liar baseball player, sports hero, he lives in a free house with 6 baths, kind of like Lachlan Murdoch lives in a big house with 28 bathrooms. Lachlan Murdoch, he doesn't have any money. He's the scapegoat in case anything goes wrong with Fox News. They'll blame Lachlan, before they blame his father, Rupert. But they do what they're told. And the stories that you see on the Murdoch News Corp, they didn't write those stories. They're typed up by military people with the fake news. And they got the liberal news, and they got the public radio and Democracy Now!, all military authors. And they do both sides against the middle, conservative and liberal. And then that herds the sheep to the processing facility. You have the left and the right paradigm. That's sheep herding. That's cattle ranching. And they do it using News Corp and Rupert Murdoch and William Paley, CBS, Comcast, RCA, NBC, CBS, NBC, CBS, what's the Alphabet Soup? Disney Corporation owns ABC, Disney. But they all do the exact same thing, 100%. So, Rose, what did you learn from, I know you dabble a little bit in the Rebecca Grossman, Scott Erickson kind of soap opera, kind of a soap opera story. Romance gone bad with margaritas.
Wow. I mean, it's a really sad story, actually. A 9-month affair. I don't know.
But
I
he
don't
won
know.
another almost 2 years after that.
Oh, did it? 2 years?
They didn't
Really?
break up right away because he had to control her because he didn't want her to rat him out.
Right.
He didn't.
Right.
She didn't. Then he,
Yeah.
he threw her under the bus like you knew he was going to.
Right.
He
Yeah.
has a new girlfriend. He has a 38-year-old girlfriend from Canada.
Right.
He
Right.
got another girlfriend this time from Canada because her much older husband
Yes.
died, was murdered or something. I don't know.
He died. Yeah.
He's dead.
I mean, Scott Erickson, it to me is a pathetic individual. I really feel sorry for him. I don't understand. Okay, let me just talk about the money. What he made $46 million, and
Well,
then
he
when
did. That's what he made career earnings in baseball. 46 million.
And then when they did the net
Who
worth,
knows where it is? We don't know where it is. We don't know where it is, Rose. He either spent it. Anyway, a bunch of that went to taxes.
okay,
And then he spent some, and then maybe some's in a Swiss bank account, right? I don't know.
it could
But
be.
he's saying he's homeless because he doesn't own a house. And
Right.
he's got a little condo there in Las Vegas near the near the Las Vegas Convention Center, near the Tropicana Hotel, or where the Tropicana used to be.
Yeah.
And he has 100,000 equity in it. Maybe he's got a big mortgage on it. It's like it's worthless.
Right.
He's got a tear down dump of a tract home in Henderson. It's not worth anything.
I mean, I find this such a sad, sad story. Obviously, I feel terrible for the Iskander family, the loss of the two boys. Just Rebecca and her husband, like, what kind of a relationship do they have? I mean, for goodness sakes.
It's a cuckold relationship. So she dates and he works and pays the bills and buys her lingerie.
Yeah.
It's obviously that's what that is. I mean, he's okay with everything. But except they got a money problem now because they're going to owe probably at least $100 million.
Yeah.
At least. Maybe they're probably going to get the majority. I don't know. Huey Cotton, the judge, is going to give us the final, how it's distributed, how much Scott versus the Grossmans. But you know that Peter Grossman, he lied like a rug on the Anne Heche burn unit story. That whole burn story was a lie. And here's something that I want to add, Steve, is that there's the issue of whether money has been hidden. And I think, yes, some money's been hidden, but probably not as much money as we think. And so there's no way they can come close to coughing up more than $5 or $6 million. So most of this is not going to be paid by them. However, there's a get out of jail free card here because Peter Grossman went on television and told everybody he announced the death of Anne Heche at the West Hills Hospital, which is across the street from his office, to create the illusion that like he's an employee of the hospital, which he's not. And he is not the director or on the board of directors of that hospital. He's in charge of a cosmetic surgery center, and he uses some of the hospital facilities. And I'm sure his office is owned by the hospital, and he rents. He's a tenant of the hospital. So he rents. But this illusion that he's the director of a burn unit, that's a bald-faced lie. And this illusion that Anne Heche died from burns, that's a lie. Now, he said she didn't die from the burns, that she died of a infection, not COVID. And it was during COVID that was announced. But she didn't. She's like the only Hollywood person that didn't die of COVID. Anyway, Hollywood.
She jumped out from the shade as well, didn't she? When she was being wheeled away.
No, that would be whoever they was pretending to be her, because she wasn't there. She's somewhere else. She's over at the Richard. She's in Venice. She's probably 5 miles away when that happened. So there was a crisis actor. The fire department, they were all from Culver City and MGM Studios. So the fire department wasn't a real fire department. They're Hollywood fire department.
Yeah, that was when they wheeled her out.
They would be a Hollywood actress with who's blonde to look like Anne Heche. But I'm just telling you that Mario Andretti or Emerson Fittipaldi or Jackie Stewart wouldn't be able to drive a Formula One race car into that house and crash it in the way that Anne Heche did. It's impossible. The house is on 36 inches of cinder block. So, and it's on a crowned road with an olive tree that's 60 years old. So you have to go around, lose all your momentum, hit the brakes, then elevate your car 3.5 feet, then punch through the wall and go into the kitchen. While a woman playing with a tortoise in the backyard with 2 dogs isn't harmed. I have a turtle lady in the backyard. What do you think the mathematical probability is? I could get a Formula One race car driver to crash a car with a fiery car crash while a turtle is being played with by a woman by the name of Lynn Michelle in the backyard. And she is now homeless, but she's only been living in that home for like 45 minutes. Like she just showed up, like just in time tenancy. That's a military house. That's a house built for the Army. That was a house that was built in the 1950s for the United States Army. All the homes on that street, Oak Grove or whatever it was called, something Grove Avenue, is they're all military houses. Now, some of them have been sold to the public. They've all been upgraded, modernized, but not the house that burned. That was the tear down house that nobody wanted. So that's the one that was destroyed. But I'm just telling you, physically, you couldn't drive a Formula One race car and duplicate what she did in a little Mini Cooper. So she didn't drive the car, and the car didn't end up in the kitchen, like they said. There are no photographs of that car in the house. The photographs are of the car in the front lawn area. It never got into the house. But that's what the media, that's what people like Cato Kalin, Brian Kalin told you, and all of the crisis actors who did videos like TMZ, Harvey Levin, they all lied like rugs. And Peter Grossman was in on it too. So guess what? His wife just got a judgment of 198,000 US dollars. And Hollywood owes Peter Grossman. He doesn't really owe Rebecca, but they owe Peter. So the last word spoken here by Brian Panish was when he had Peter Grossman on the stand, as he says, "You're making a documentary over your wife's persecution here on the killing of these 2 boys, aren't you?" "No, sir, I'm not." He goes, "Who's that man in the corner there? Who is that man? Do you know his name?" "Yes." "What's his name?" "Does he work for Hollywood?" "Not to my knowledge." "Does he work for Netflix?" "Doesn't he work for Netflix?" "No, I think he's a consultant." "So he's a consultant to Netflix?" He goes, "Netflix is negotiating with you for a film. They even have a title, don't they?" "No, sir, they don't." I go, "Judicial misconduct? Is that the title of your wife's film? Isn't your wife going to get paid as a co-producer? Isn't she going to be a co-producer or an executive producer? How much money are they going to pay you? How much money are they going to pay you? Who's that man? Why is he in the court?" And I'm just telling you, you couldn't be in that courtroom unless you had business. How the hell they let that Hollywood guy in there? Because the judge is in on it too. The judge is probably going to get paid too, because they're going to turn this tragedy into money. And you know that Netflix is going to pay a Zurich bank account, right? They're not going to give no money to Bank of America in downtown Los Angeles. This is going to Grand Cayman and back to Zurich, where Peter Grossman is probably going to be living. He's going to file for divorce, move to Italy, and open up his Swiss bank accounts in Lugano, Switzerland, probably, and live. That's where I'd recommend he go, is Lugano, Switzerland, because it's really nice, like living in Italy, but you have a Swiss bank account, and you don't have to be on the euro. You'll be on Swiss francs. He'll be on Swiss francs, which is exempt from the euro trash. So the thing is that they're making a Hollywood film. That's the payback to Peter. They're going to turn this into a couple $100 million in royalties. You know, I don't know how it's going to all work out, but they're going to try to take care of Peter Grossman. So this goes to Rose's question from several weeks ago. Well, where's the money coming from? Hollywood. And that's where I always thought it was coming from. Somewhere, I mean, Jennifer and I speculated about Major League Baseball because they're part of the entertainment apparatus, World Cup soccer, cycling, the Olympics. That's all part of Hollywood. That's all part of BBC entertainment. That's all part of Australian entertainment. Is you always have the sports entertainment component. And I, for a long time, was thinking, because Scott was sports entertainment, that some of the money could come from Scott's side, but the real money was coming from Grossman and Anne Heche's side. This is a payback for you lying for us as a medical doctor who's a cosmetic surgeon, and who better to have a, quote, burn expert certified that Anne Heche is dead now. And we all believe you. Never seen a body, never seen a medical exam, haven't seen the autopsy. I don't know if she's alive or dead. She could be hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein for all I know. But anyway, Steve got the part of the story because I know Australian entertainment, television covered it, because they do whatever, like TMZ and whatever Rupert Murdoch has on Fox. They broadcast all that stuff in Australia, and they do it here, and I'm sure they do it in Canada also. Is that most of those stories are completely false, and most of the stories on CBS and NBC, those are false also. It's not that the Murdochs are the only people; they're all doing it, all of them. But one's on the right and one's on the left of the paradigm. All right, Steve, what are your thoughts of this wacky, crazy, the murder or deaths of wrongful death of Mark, age 11, and Jacob, age 8, in a crosswalk on a autumn evening? Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into this case. It sounds riveting. I was just going to say about, I thought the Anne Heche story was that it was car hacking, because she was going to blow the lid on some documentary subject about all things.
That's the cover story.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. I got a whole series. You go get my Anne Heche videos. I think I got 14 videos you can look at in real that I did while it was happening. But no, nobody blows the whistle in Hollywood. Sharon Tate didn't blow a whistle. Abigail Folger didn't blow a whistle. Lena LaBianca didn't blow no whistle. William Colby of the CIA, he didn't blow no whistle. Nobody blows a whistle.
The Isaac Cappies of the world, are they for real?
There are no whistleblowers on. If there was a whistleblower, they won't appear on television. Okay, because TV will not allow it to be on television, and there'll be no.
I mean, more kind of social media sphere, like the Isaac Cappy story.
There's social media sphere is 100% control. They control social media exactly how they control radio and television and newspapers. So there can be no My Lai massacre on social media. None. The My Lai massacre was kept secret for 18 months. It's a miracle it came out. It came out because of Scripps College and Pomona College and Claremont College. And it came out because Ronald Rettenhauer wrote 33 letters to Richard Nixon and senators and congressmen and to newspapers who would not publish the letter. He sent the letter to conservative newspapers who refused to publish his letter. But eventually it was embarrassing because he was mailing all these letters. And so they put Seymour Hersh on it. And then the story broke when Seymour was assigned the story. So everybody says he broke the story. BS. That story had already been written about for many, many months, for at least 7 months. But it had been completely boycotted by the media. Completely. And it was the CIA decided that this was going to get out, so we better get ahead of it. That's what they call getting ahead of the story. And they would not choose Anne Heche to get ahead of a story. They'd choose, I'll tell you, they'd choose Tucker Carlson, or they would choose Joe Rogan, or they would choose Alex Jones, or they would choose, Bill O'Reilly, or some retard like Rachel Maddow, or Andrea Mitchell, or Leslie Stahl. That's who they would choose, or Bob Woodward. Those are all fake journalists. They're all fake, 100%. And they would pick a fake journalist to get ahead of the story. Seymour Hersh has a Pulitzer Prize, but he's fake, 100% fake. Okay? They give awards to phony, fake criminals to make them look like they're like truthers. That's how they roll. And they give Academy Awards to people that are not very good actors too. And then they don't give awards to other people that are. So he's like, whatever, anything goes. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so the conventional belief here is that they're bringing in digital ID and things like social media bans for under 16s, which they've done so far. The reason they're doing that is because they want to gatekeep
Protect children.
social media more. But if social media is already compromised, then why the digital ID?
Well, because they just want us to be verified. And they don't want to tell you that's the real reason. They want everyone to be locked in or locked out, right? So if you're in compliance, then you should have a real ID, and then you can have internet access. And if you don't believe in that, you can't watch my show, because my whole channel will be boycotted. It'll go dark, because they'll get rid of me, because I won't get the real ID. So then my show will just go dark. And then the only thing you'll be able to watch is Joe Rogan and Stu Peters and Maria Z and Glenn Greenwald and Sean Silverstein and his father, Oliver Silverstein Stone, and Tucker Carlson. You can watch their shows, but they're all fake shows. So the only shows you'll be able to watch are fake. And all the real shows will be black, dark. It's messed up, man. That's what I call strategic Hamlet. And they did this in Vietnam, and they did this in Rwanda. And now they're doing it to Australia and America. And they hit Australia harder than they hit America with COVID. They were more draconian, Count Dracula, zero tolerance. That's a military program, zero tolerance. That I don't trust you. And that whole real ID bullshit about the internet access, how come the providers don't provide me with, I don't know who they are. Do they have a real ID? Can they tell me where their executives live? I know where Lachlan Murdoch lives, but you know what? He has other homes. He's not there all the time. I want to know every bed he sleeps in. And I don't. I only know one house that's assigned to him. And he doesn't own that house. Jed Clampett owns that house. The TV billionaire dude. Yeah. CBS Television owns that house, not him. But anyway, they say it's Lachlan Murdoch's house, meaning it's not his house, but that's one of his houses. But he has other houses too, and I don't know where they are. And I don't know what wall to jump over. And they got cameras everywhere, wherever he is. So they'll have a helicopter on your butt and a drone and armed guards, capturing you as a domestic terrorist, breaking into his property. But part of it is to keep you out. But more importantly, it's to keep Lachlan Murdoch locked up. He's in a prison too. And Rupert Murdoch's in a prison. And Paul Pelosi is in a prison. And Nancy Pelosi is in a prison. And all the bankers on Sand Hill Road, Joe LaCobe, Dean Jacobson, they're in a prison too. JJ Cardwell, he's in a prison. In other words, they're locked down in a gated compound in Atherton or in Pacific Heights. They're locked down. And they can't go anywhere without the controllers knowing what they're doing. So if you hear about like a styrofoam hammer attack, it's fake. It's not possible for Paul Pelosi to get conked on the head by a hammer. And you do know the house where that happened is where Nancy's security guards, that's where they live.
Right.
He doesn't live in that house. He lives up the street. He's 4 houses away. He's 1 block up the hill on Pacific Avenue. The hammer attack happened on Broadway. That's the block below where he lives. He doesn't live there. He's never lived there. There's no view of the Golden Gate Bridge. The house where he lives, you can see Belvedere, Alcatraz, where he belongs, the Golden Gate Bridge. You can see all that from the house where he sleeps. But he doesn't get a hammer attack there because that's his house. When he gets a hammer attack, you go down where all the guards are with their weapons, and then you hit me with a styrofoam hammer so I don't get hurt. And then we stage this whole ridiculous intruder BS. Do you have any idea how many surveillance cameras there are on that guardhouse? There's like 27 cameras. Like, are your guards all asleep? Are they all, knocked out, with knockout drugs? What's going on here, man? What kind of guard are you? All right. So let's go to Shirley. What's your thoughts on the any of the topics that we've talked? It's just kind of a potpourri, and then we'll wrap up tonight.
Well, looking at the Iskander case, it is sad. You have 2 children who are dead, and when you go through and watch all the history and the trials, everybody behaved poorly. There wasn't anybody that didn't do anything what you would consider the right thing to do. And it makes a lot of sense when you talk about at the end doing a video. It's you can rewrite history. She, for example, Rebecca Grossman, she never apologized to the mom, and that was always a thing throughout everything. The mom said she's never apologized. She would say, "Oh, it's sad or it's bad that it happened, but not I'm sorry I did this."
Well, it'd be like an
Throughout,
admission of guilt. So her lawyers probably said, don't admit it, you know. But it
yeah,
didn't matter. She was found guilty anyway. So it was
but
a
it's
really simple case.
yeah, yeah.
But she
But
wouldn't have
here at the end,
she's been convicted for over a year and she hasn't apologized in the last year. So she's had many opportunities to apologize, but never did.
and I think that's what, at least what I see, people want to see some kind of remorse or, focus on the children. And there's none of that. But then you can rewrite that in a Netflix film.
That's what
You can
Oliver
rewrite history.
Stone does. Oliver Stone's film, look at all the film. He did a JFK. That's a cover-up film. He doesn't tell you about the obelisk in the park. He doesn't tell you about the 666 addresses, 3 buildings, all 33, highest level of the obelisk. He doesn't tell you there's an obelisk. He doesn't tell you that the tip of the pyramid is where 3 snipers were over Main Street, atop the railroad trestle, where there were a minimum of 24 men standing there protecting the perimeter of the 3 snipers. Only 2 of the snipers fired. 1 sniper did not shoot. They didn't need him. He was not needed. He's backup. And Oliver Stone didn't tell you that. He talks about the grassy knoll and the picket fence. That has nothing to do with the case. It's like talking about the book depository. It has nothing to do with the case. But it's all, they talk about what's not relevant and to magic, right, to avert your eyes, right? That's the magic. Magic is an illusion that we don't tell the trick. How you don't tell the mechanics of how you do the trick. You pull a bunny rabbit out of a hat. Well, if you tell people it's in a cage below the table, then they won't be surprised when you reach in and pull it out. So you get the beautiful assistant, the track lighting, all things to distract you from a bunny rabbit in a cage that's covered by the tablecloth. That's Oliver Stone. That's what this Netflix will be. This Netflix documentary will be for the Rebecca Grossman. Judicial misconduct. There is judicial misconduct in this case. I do agree that the title is actually accurate, but I don't think I'll agree with the movie. But I do like the title, Judicial Misconduct. Isn't that like the O.J. Simpson trial? Didn't they have judicial misconduct? And there was only one person of all the parades of people who appeared on television, only one person who has any dignity at all. And that was the limo driver, Ron Park, who parked the limo and was ringing that doorbell for 20 minutes before a shadowy figure emerged from the garage area with a cut knuckle, dripping blood everywhere. And it was Ron Park who sped to the airport to take OJ so that he wouldn't miss his 11:45 p.m. flight to O'Hare, Chicago, Illinois. Only Ron Park told the truth. Everybody else lied. Everybody else lied in that case. The police lied. The forensic people lied. Mark Furman. He didn't actually lie too much, but he got busted because of his audition tape got leaked. So that pretty much torpedoed him. F. Lee Bailey lied. All the lawyers lied. Marcia Clark lied. She suppressed the 34-minute basically confession from OJ that he gave. He waived his right to remain silent. He waived his Fifth Amendment right. You have it on tape, and she doesn't play it for the jury to play. I'd have convicted him just on that tape alone. Can't explain his cut finger. Cannot explain that. That's extremely incriminating. He admitted to blood in his Bronco. He admitted to blood on his driveway. He admitted to blood in his foyer. He admitted to blood in his bedroom and his bathroom. On the night that his wife had her head decapitated, and your knuckle is cut, and there's blood all over the murder scene and your bedroom. I mean, you could convict him on that. I don't need a forensic expert. I don't need DNA. You admitted it. You admitted it. The LA police didn't plan it. You planted it. You, the number one witness against O.J. Simpson was O.J. Simpson. And you conceal that from the jury. You don't play the tape. I mean, Marcia Clark, you're in on it too. You want him to be, you're playing a role that you don't want this guy convicted. And so, you know, they all of them, they're all bad. Okay, go ahead, Shirley.
Well, it's this cycle. So they feed each other, and now you are trapped, though. I mean, even like Peter Grossman, he's got all this stuff, but anything comes along is like, hey, buddy, you know, we did this for you. We did this. I mean, I'm just,
he's owned.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's this cycle. It's the Roman circus. Like you said, it's one feeds each other, but you know, nothing is right. Nothing is good.
Shirley, also, I think Scott is owned by organized baseball too. I mean, he has to do what they tell him in terms of celebrity tennis. And I mean, they gave him his life, but now they still probably tell him what to do. You know, he lived for a while, for about 3 years for free in someone's house in Malibu who was connected to the whole sports world. And Juxtaposition knows this better than I do. But yeah, I mean, I think you've put your finger on it. It's one hand washing the other, but it's a trap too.
Yeah,
he's had the same agency for his entire career. It's the Beverly Hills Sports Council. Beverly Hills Sports Council. They, just so you know who works for Scott Erickson, you know, they had Kurt Schilling, Jose Canseco. It's the who's who. Ricky Henderson, the number one baseball base stealer, was a client of theirs. Then Roger Clemens of the Boston Red Sox. The top baseball World Series players, almost all of them are clients of Beverly Hills Sports Council. And when they're done with baseball, they then emerge as celebrity golf and celebrity television and Hollywood films. They're integrated with Hollywood because, you know, sports entertainment and baseball is integrated. It's a division of Hollywood. So after you're done with that, we just transfer you over, like OJ. OJ went from playing football to doing Monday Night Football with Howard Cosell and Al Michaels. Then he appears in films, you know, like Naked Gun 1, Naked Gun 2. Then he was going to be in Frogman, Navy Frogman, but they have put that in the can because he was slit a person's throat in the film Navy Frogman, and the Navy SEALs taught him how to slit throats. And what do you know? 6 weeks after he was trained on how to do that, he slit the throat of Nicole Brown. And the Navy trained him how to do it. And that's embarrassing. So, you know, we had better not show that film, maybe. All right. So they're all, Peter Grossman and Scott Erickson are controlled now by Hollywood mafioso. It's like the Chicago outfit is running the show here. And they have fixers, right? They got James Silverstein. They got Freddie the Fixer, a guy named Freddie in Malibu, Freddie the Fixer. He's a friend of his agent, Rick Thurman. His agents are Jeffrey Boris and Rick Thurman and a Jewish guy, Ben Horowitz. That's who is the babysitters of Scott Erickson. And they know a dozen lawyers. And Scott needs lawyers because he burns through them because he lies so much that the lawyer's like, this is too dangerous. I can't get a straight answer out of my client. I think I better move on. He's been fired by a number of lawyers. All right. Final thoughts, Rose, from you. And then I think we'll wrap up tonight's video with a cheers of from the Juxtaposition Cups. Not yet, but go ahead, Rose.
No, I mean, final thoughts. I really appreciate this coverage of the Scott Erickson and the Iskander family. There was a lot of information there. The background of the mother and the father, I think that was very relevant, the industry they worked in. And, you know, there was a lot of things in this case that I learned, and I would never have looked at this if it wasn't for you bringing it up, Jennifer and Juxta. And I think there's a lot of learning lessons here, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Rose. And remember, I have Steve Ann Heche to thank, because if it wasn't for the Ann Heche fiery car crash story, I would never have pursued the Rebecca Grossman, because Ann Heche took me to Peter Grossman and the West Hills Acute Care Hospital, and that took me to Rebecca Grossman's running and killing into a crosswalk with two little boys, Mark and Jacob, age 11 and 8. I never would have pursued that story were it not for the Ann Heche story. So it's serendipitous, a very serendipitous, accidental that we spend so much time on the civil trial of the death of the two boys. So, Steve, what do you say about that? You can have the final word there, and then we'll just do our juxtaposition mug salute. But what do you think about serendipity, where you starts out, you pick a story that you're interested in, like you are interested in several different aspects of your society. And if you pursue any of them, it will take you somewhere that may serendipitously, you'll learn about a different part of an operation that you didn't set out to look for it, but you discovered it because you were researching something else.
Definitely. Well, you may recall the video I just shot through where I'd kind of done all the mapping based on the different entities and connections. I'm trying to slowly build something like that. The bind that I'm in on that is that I'm leveraging a lot of AI summaries of documents. I've got to have a keen eye as to whether they're accurate or not in order to kind of generate something on that scale. But I think that should be hopefully beneficial in tying all that together.
That's brilliant. That's like quantum. You're like quantum computing. You're trying to correlate, and you're asking the question, does coincidence equal correlation? That you're trying to link what events, and do they correlate? In other words, is there some similarities, even though the events are different, the people are different, but could they be coordinated by the same controller? And that's kind of what you'll serendipitously discover, that a lot of things that look unrelated are actually orchestrated by a central authority. And banking is going to be a part of that, because nobody can do anything serious without a bank. You've got to have money. You've got to make a payroll, or if you're going to blow stuff up, you got to have the bombs and the weapons. Or if you want to crash a car, you got to buy a fleet of cars to crash. And typically you need to rehearse. So you might have to blow some stuff up before the big event, right? You want to practice. So you're going to take money, and the money's going to come from a bank. So the bank's going to have to approve of your operation.
One thing I've always wondered is, I know you've touched on a lot of elements about, the Vatican, the Catholic Church, obelisks, Freemasonry. And the thing that I still can't quite figure out, despite all the reading that I've done, is how in a lot of these global conflicts at present, like in Iran, for example, you have an element that is talking about the Antichrist, burning red heifers, Kabbalah, and that kind of thing. And yet they're engaging with atheists like Netanyahu, or Epstein's meeting with Lawrence Krauss, who thinks the universe can come from nothing. How do these entities align? I can't figure it out.
Well, there's only one obelisk for the whole world. There's one bank for the whole world. That is, Basel, Switzerland, Bank for International Settlements, or in Zurich, UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland. There's one bank for the communists. There's one bank for the Taliban. There's one bank for Arabs, United Arab Emirates. There's one bank for Israel. There's one bank for Australia. There's one bank for United Kingdom. There's only one bank for China. There's only one bank for Russia. There's one bank. So religion doesn't matter. There are no religions. There are no people. There are no nations. There's no nations. There's no Australia. There's no Canada. There's no Mexico. There's no Brazil or Argentina. That's a Hunger Game with a flag. A flag does not make a nation. And the sovereignty movement is a psyops, because clearly people don't have sovereignty. They're inmates in a prison. And your nation has no sovereignty. It's insolvent. It's dependent on a bank to finance and make a payroll. And those military people, they wouldn't get paid if a bank didn't pay them. So there's only one army. It's NATO, and they control Australia, and they control Latin America, and they control China, and they control Somalia, and they control Rwanda and Vietnam, and they control Hawaii and California. There's one NATO for the whole world. And the rest is just theater. It's theater of the absurdity. I have an American flag with 13 stripes. Okay, the Swiss flag is right in your face. It's a white cross on a red canton. But all their colonies have red crosses on white canton, like the Conquistador Spanish or Sir Francis Drake from England. He's got a white sail with a red cross because the Spanish, who are the enemies of the English, are financed by Switzerland, both of them. So they both use the same bank. So I say to you, Steve, how can you be really enemies when you bank at the same place and you go to the same parties? And whether you're a part of the Taliban or whether you're a communist or a Viet Cong or a Nazi or a Japanese or a Buddhist or a Catholic or an LDS Mormon, or you're a People's Temple, Jim Jones disciple, or a Church of Scientology, you all use the same bank. So you're all just different circus acts. It's like World Cup soccer. World Cup soccer and the Olympics is the answer to your question. It's fake. They have a fake event where you have national pride. Oh, Australia, how many golds do they have? How much does Canada have? Who cares? You don't have a country. It's fake. Okay. You know that I know Eric Heiden? He has 5 Olympic gold medals from the Winter Games in Montreal, Canada. He won 5 gold medals in Montreal, Canada, Steve. Do you know where those gold medals? He's the only person who has won 5 gold medals at one Olympics. Eric Heiden. Do you know where I asked him, where are those gold medals? Because we were near his house. I go, I want to see the medals. He goes, oh, they're at my parents' house. He said it's in Wisconsin. He said that the medals were at his parents' house in Wisconsin. I said, where in the house? Are they like when you come in the foyer? Are they there or in the study or the library? Where do they have them? Take a wild guess what he told me. They're in a shoebox in the coat closet in the entry hall. And he says when he goes over there for holiday dinner, he'll pull out the shoebox and look at them and then he puts it back. Is that where you put your Olympic gold medals? He has 5 from Montreal, Canada. They're in a shoebox in his parents' coat closet shelf. Now, he's a badass athlete. He's a very world-class athlete who uses drugs, of course. They all do. And he doesn't deny it. Never lied to me. Never lied to me. But I'm just telling you that the awards that he won, which are some of the greatest awards ever given an athlete in any sport whatsoever, this was speed skating, but he went on to win the American National Road Championship in Philadelphia, which is patterned after Champs-Élysées in Paris. And he won the biggest bike race in America. He won in a sprint, and he can't sprint. And he's as surprised as anybody that he won that race. It's a 160-mile race, like 250-kilometer road race in heat, in humidity, in Philadelphia. Eric Heiden won. So besides his 5 Olympic gold medals, he has a national championship in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which used to be home to the Liberty Bell that had a crack in it. I actually touched the Liberty Bell. Then they got rid of it after I touched it. But it's somewhere else, right? I touched it, and of course, I soiled it. So that was the end of the Liberty Bell. And the end of my liberty is now I don't believe in the liberty concept anymore when they took the bell away. So Eric Heiden is a serious dude, and we can learn from him. He put his number 1 prize in a shoebox in his parents' foyer in the coat closet on the shelf above the raincoats. Anyway, in other words, he doesn't value those. He values his wife and his children, not the medals. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. I mean, that would be like in a prominent place. It shows you I'm at such lower level than him. I would actually I have a bunch of stuff and they're in boxes they're in bourbon boxes, but they're not on display. I don't have enough room for all this junk I have. So as my brothers would say, my younger brothers would say, Steve, when I would come back from a motorcycle race where, I got a prize, I got a trophy and cash, they said, "Oh, another dust collector." That's what my little brothers would say. "Oh, hey, I won." Yeah, it's a dust collector. And it just took me from my pedestal and knocked me off. They bringing me back to earth. It's don't put that in our face. You're just our brother. Knock it off with I won the motorcycle race. I don't care. That's what my brothers used to do to me. So it just pissed me off. It's well, what am I going to do? I risked my life for this. I was who cares? Whatever. Nobody cares. So I love sports, but in the end, I mean, your life is more important than winning a bicycle race or a motorcycle race. Is right now we're all in a race, in a race for our lives. And there's not going to be any medal presentations. You're not going to get an Olympic medal. You're not going to get a cash prize. It's going to be thankless. If you save people in your city, Steve, it's because you're a heroic, courageous man. It's not because people are going to give you $1 million prize and build a bronze statue to remember you by. They're thems that pick cotton are soon forgotten in the Hunger Games. And that's what I am. I'm a cotton picker. And my show is like a big carbine, cotton picking machine. I'm just trying to get as many people on board as possible before they turn me off. It's a race against time. All right. Well, anyway, Jennifer, wonderful to have you tonight. Rose, thanks for coming in from Toronto way, Canada. And Shirley, always a pleasure to see you from the deserts there of Arizona. And Steve, so glad to have you back again. You are definitely working on very important social topics. Oh, what is that you have there?
I was just going to say, I thought for the Canadian in the room, I better share this. When I reached for something to prop up my computer, This is the centenary film board of Canada they produced in 1966, a giant book. It was the first thing I reached for. It was $5 at a Salvation Army store here, but
wow.
And they presented it to visiting world dignitaries at the time. But I thought that might be a little piece of trivia.
Very nice.
on brighter note. Anyway,
what city did you buy this book?
Melbourne, Australia, and somehow it found its way here.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's all this. Yeah. Anyway.
Very nice.
Thought it was an interesting piece of trivia because it was the first thing I reached for when I was looking for a giant book to prop up my laptop.
Oh, wow. That's a juxtaposition and serendipitous all at once. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I'll see you in the lobby for some champagne and beluga caviar. All right? So, again, catch you in the lobby after the show, if I can find